Unboxing and review of the Red5audio RVX6 USB microphone. This review is a little different to the previous reviews I've done, in that I've already got some history with Red5audio. I've had in the past at least 2 sets of earphones, 2 microphones and a set of studio speakers from this company, and in that time I've never had a problem. And when I say I've got a history with this company, only as a customer. I've always bought these things and paid full price for them, and I've never actually done a review of any of their stuff before. And in fact, the microphone I'm using now, and I have used for the last few years to do the voiceovers on my videos, is a Red5audio one. And I must have got the speakers about 4 or 5 years ago, and they've been working day in, day out since. You're probably thinking, why is this important, or why am I mentioning it? But my concern when I'm doing unboxings and reviews is that you're always taking the thing straight out of the box and it's brand new, and then playing with it for a while, and you really don't get to see how it wears over time. And my other Red audio equipment has been in daily use for years and none of it's ever broken down, so I'm really pleased to be able to review one of their items. Right then, let's get on with the unboxing. And the box it's come in is absolutely huge, and it's hard to believe there's a microphone in there because it's big enough to hold a speaker. Rather than using bubble wrap like most people, they've padded the gap between the outer box and the inner box with more cardboard, which means it's virtually impossible for any damage to reach the actual microphone. It's well and truly padded. Hidden underneath the cardboard and the outer box is a very posh red and white inner box, which is sealed with sort of shrimp wrap cellophane. So I'll take the cellophane off so we can have a look at that. The packaging definitely says quality, so you're expecting good quality even before you see the microphone. The inner box is definitely a design statement. It just says the name of the company and the model of the product. It doesn't even say it's a USB mic or shout about its features. It's a very cool and understated design. Right, let's take the outer sleeve off and take a look inside the box. Wow. The packaging's really neat and it kind of frames the mic, so you don't really want to take it out of the box. It just looks so sexy. The box has got lots of padding in it, and the microphone seems to be sitting snugly inside it, so it would protect it from any damage during shipping. Before we get to taking the microphone out, I'll just take out the little accessories box and see what we get with it. Inside the accessories box you get a USB lead, I don't know what these are, and your instructions, and that's it. So now let's move on to the microphone and take that out of the box. Assuming it wants to come, it's quite well stuck in there. Wow, it's really heavy, which for a microphone and stand is a really good thing. It really is good solid quality, and I can't imagine any part of this wanting to rattle. And if you're new to the world of microphones, I'm sure you can imagine why you wouldn't want any part to rattle. The build quality is really good, and the switch has a really good solid feel to it with a good solid click. All the dial controls, you know, the pots or variable resistors, whatever they are, they also have a really good solid feel to them. There's no looseness or play in any of the controls, and the feel of the lathe turned metal knobs really adds to the overall high quality build of this mic. The mute button is got a solid click, but it isn't a click release, so I assume that's done digitally. We'll find that out in a bit when we plug it in. On the bottom of the microphone there's a mini USB port, a headphone socket and a standard microphone mount socket, and this is so you can put it onto any microphone stand you might want to mount it on. Saying all that, the microphone stand provided is really strong and sturdy, and it's got little rubber feet to isolate it so you don't get too much vibrations from the surface you're putting it on, and I can't see this getting broken or knocked over easily. Right, let's take a look at the other features on the microphone before I plug it in. And on the front of the microphone we've got a headphone volume and a mute button. They've obviously designed it so that this way is facing towards you as the working side of the microphone, because you could constantly be adjusting the headphone volume, and you'll definitely be using the mute switch multiple times during any working project. On the back of the microphone are the settings you'd probably want to do once on any working project, or you may like to do as I do, set the microphone up and leave it set that way, so that when you return to it at a later date everything's all the same. And those settings are the microphone gain and the directivity pattern selection switch. And it's got 4 patterns that are available on this mic, and they are stereo, omni, cardioid and bidirectional. We'll take a look at these in more detail in a moment. But firstly, let's have a better look at the contents of the accessories box. And you'll remember we've got in there the instruction booklet. We've got this little bag, which I now know is spare washers for the side of the microphone stand, and the USB lead. So let's open the USB lead and take a look. This is a really nice high quality USB lead. It's cloth wound and it just feels quality. It's not your plasticky rubbish. And they've made the effort of putting a ferrite core on there, which theoretically reduces the chances of the data being corrupt travelling down the wire, because it reduces external interference getting into the device. Right, let's take a look at the instructions and I'll explain exactly what the directivity mode switch does. Right, the directivity mode switch has 4 settings. The first one is stereo, and that is exactly what you'd expect. It's recording left and right into separate channels. This is the ideal setting for recording musical instruments or music or anything you want to sound natural. I would even be tempted to put this onto a laptop and use it to capture nature sounds that I sometimes use when I'm doing soundtracks. So say birds cheeping or the sound of a river flowing or waves crashing or something like this. Obviously you have to be prepared to carry the microphone and the laptop around, but if you're looking for really good quality natural sounds in stereo, then this is an option that's worth considering. If you're new to the world of mics, I'll just explain these graphs that they put in the manuals, and they always use these, so you'll get used to seeing them. The graph on the left hand side is a frequency response curve, and it's basically how well the microphone can hear different frequencies. So looking at the frequency response curve from left to right, you can imagine at 50 Hz it's not quite so sensitive, but then at 100 Hz it starts to really click in, and then it stays about the same right the way until we get the top end. And then it gets a little extra sensitivity around the 2 kHz mark. And then this sort of line waves around then up until the 10 kHz mark. And at about 15 kHz it drops off quite abruptly towards the 20 kHz mark. And what does this mean to you? Well, basically, if you could have a completely flat line, that would be a perfect microphone. However, no such thing exists, no matter how much money you pay. There's always slight variations in the frequencies. However, you can look if it's really dire by where it drops off both ends, the top end and the bottom end. And this mic has got a really good frequency response curve. Right, at the other side of the diagram, on the right hand side of the screen, you'll see two circles. And these represent the directional map of how the microphone picks up sound. And you'll notice in this particular case, we've got two circles. And this is because we've got two channels, which is your stereo. Now, the circle, the center of the circle, represents your microphone, and the shape within the circle represents the area of sound that the microphone will pick up. So you'll see on the channel that represents the left hand side, it's slightly leaning over to what looks like the right, but when you reverse it, it's actually hearing the left, which is correct. And on the right hand side, you get the opposite effect where it looks like it's leaning to the left, which is actually picking up the right hand side. So the right hand microphone will pick up that area of right hand space with a little bit of overlap towards the left hand one, and the left hand one will then take over and pick up the whole left end. And that will make the sound more natural. It'll sound like you hear things through two ears. Right, the next selection would be omni mode, and this literally means everything all around the microphone. It's got no set directionality. So for example, if you were trying to record what was going on in a room, you'd set the microphone up in the middle of the room, put it in omni mode, and theoretically it should pick up anything from any direction within the room. And you can see the directional pattern there is just a circle. And assuming it does what it says on the tin, if you were to set this up in, say, a conference situation, or if you were something like a ghost hunter, you'd set that up in the middle of the room, and any noise from anywhere within that room, and the microphone would pick up on it. The next setting is cardioid, and this is probably the most common directional pattern you get for most microphones. And this is the one most people use for, say, doing what I'm doing now, for doing voiceovers or for singing directly into the microphone. Basically, the microphone's set up so it's picking up what's directly in front of it. However, it's not quite unidirectional, which would be a real nuisance if you were trying to sing or talk into the microphone, because if you moved your head slightly from side to side, you'd lose your voice, the signal would weaken. So it's got a little bit of leeway to allow you to move slightly, but it'll still pick up your voice if you're in front of the microphone. To help you remember this pattern, if you think of cardioid as cardio, which is a heart, if you look at the pattern and turn it upside down, it is a heart shape. The last pattern setting is bidirectional, which means it picks up sound directly in front of the microphone as well as directly behind the microphone, but it's far less sensitive to sound at either side of the microphone. And you could imagine how useful this would be if you were doing a podcast or something and you were interviewing someone across a desk. So the person on one side of the desk could be heard clearly, and the person behind the desk could be heard clearly. So that is probably the only use I could think of for that, but I'm sure there's lots of other uses out there that people can find. Right, we spent hours talking about this microphone. Let's plug it in and see if my computer will detect it, how easy it is to install, and how it sounds. Firstly, I'll connect the small side of the USB lead into the microphone itself. I do like it when you get these Velcro cable tidies on the lead, because I tend to fasten it to the stand or to a desk or whatever in case I ever trip over the lead, and then at least I'll only damage the lead and it won't tug straight onto the microphone itself. And because it's a standard USB lead, you can easily replace it if you ever have to. So I'll plug the other end into the USB 2 port on my computer and see what the computer says. And straight away, I haven't had to manually install any drivers or anything, and the computer's setting it up. And that all seems to have gone really successfully. I'll just double check it in the USB devices to check it has installed, because it just seems too easy. And there it is on the end, the Red5audio RVX6. And if we click on that, We've got all this technical stuffs in there, so I'm assuming it's alright. On the microphone itself, a little green light has lit up on the mute button, and if you press it, it goes red, so that all seems to be okay. So far so good, and now all I need to do is boot up some software and we'll try doing a little bit of recording on it. But before we do that, I'm going to try some really simple tests using my mobile phone with a signal generator on 1000 Hz, and we'll just check the basic functions of the microphone. The first thing I'll check is the mute button. And that's a very positive test. Now I'll check the stereo. I'm moving back and forwards between the speakers, so hopefully you can hear that at your home. On the recording here it's very clear. Now I'll check the omnidirectional mode. Theoretically it shouldn't change at all when I move it right round the microphone. I think that was another very positive test. So now I'll check the cardioidal pattern and see how that does. I think that's another very successful test, and the last one will be the bidirectional, and we'll see how it performs on that. I know these tests weren't at all scientific, but it's more like the real world, and let's face it, when you're using a mic like this you'll be using it in the real world, and I think it did exactly what the switch position said it should do. And I particularly like the stereo. It really works well for one microphone and not two microphones positioned apart. I think that's the one I'll be using. Right, I'm going to do some very short recordings now using the RVX6. I'll do some of my voice, then of a guitar, then of a Kalimba. And between the three things, because they're so very different, it should give you a good idea of how the microphone stands up in day-to-day use. This is the RVX6, and this is just a very rough test. The microphone is sat on my desk without peak catchers or windscreens or isolation booth or anything, so you're hearing all the background noise and everything in the room. But this demonstrates the kind of quality you can get straight out of the box when using this microphone.
This is a whisper to see if the RVX6 microphone can record such a very small sound source.
That was the microphone completely flat and unedited. Now here it is with my preferred sound. This is the second test of the RVX6 microphone, but this time I've got a windjammer on it, and I'll be taking it through the same VSTs I use when I do my normal voiceovers, so the sound is slightly edited, but this will compare it with my normal microphone. The difference between my current microphone and the RVX6 is quite notable. and it would probably take me a while to set it up the way I like it. But there is a massive difference in the clarity. The RVX6 is way crisper. However, in fairness to my old microphone, it is going through an analog mixing desk and effects, so there's going to be some difference there anyway. This is a brief test using a guitar. Firstly, I'll strum some chords, then I'll do a little finger picking. This isn't an expensive guitar, but it's the one I've reviewed most recently, so if you want you can go back and compare the recordings there with this recording. Now a little bit of finger picking. Because this is a review and I wanted to keep it honest and real, I simply placed the microphone on a desk and sat in front of it. However, if I isolated the microphone and played with the EQ and effects, this would do a really amazing job of recording guitar. And I even only noticed at the end of the recording that you can actually hear my breathing, which shows just how sensitive the microphone is. Now a little bit of very basic Kalimba. And there's a reason I chose this instrument, and that's because it's very difficult to record. It has a very loud strike, but then the important tone is in the fade off, where it's very quiet. So to find a microphone that can record that initial strike without clipping and still get the fading pitch is very difficult, and this microphone I thought coped very well. I'll show the waveform here so you can see what I'm talking about. Again, I feel that the microphone really rose to the challenge there and recorded the Kalimba really well. As anyone out there who's tried recording Kalimba will know, it's a difficult instrument to try and get a good recording of. And it's worth noting that this is pure, straight into the computer. I haven't put it through any VSTs or any alteration. Conclusion. Well, the review speaks for itself really. The quality of the build of the microphone is fantastic. I can imagine it'll last for years. The quality of sound produced by the microphone is fantastic. The design and the presentation of the microphone is really excellent, and you get just what you need with the accessories and not boxes of bits that you have to leave lying around in a drawer somewhere. And it looks really good sitting on your desk. It looks real quality. I've realised as I'm closing up this review, there's a few things I've missed that I need to mention. The first thing is the lead length, and the lead is about 2 meters, which is about 6.5 feet, which is ample for most jobs. The second thing is the gain on the microphone leaves you lots of headroom. I did the recordings on this video at between 25 and 40%. I never actually went over halfway with the gain, which means if you had to record something very quiet, you could. You just have to turn that gain up. The last thing is, if you're starting out and you want a vlog or something similar, this is all you need. You don't even need a sound card. You don't need a mixing desk or anything. Basically, it's got its own sound card built into it. So you just plug the microphone into your computer, and you will need some headphones, and that's it. So when you consider the price of this microphone, which at this point is about £150, it's an absolute bargain. If you've been shopping for microphones recently, you'll know that it's really hard to get a microphone of this quality for twice the price. So I highly recommend this microphone. If you enjoyed this video and the review, Please like and subscribe, and then you'll be notified when I upload new videos in the future. And you might even enjoy some of my guitar lessons. Thank you for watching.